Are you a Fujifilm camera user? Great! I love them too. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take advantage of the true-to-life color processing tailored to Fujifilm cameras in Capture One. Keep watching. Hi everyone, this is Kasia Zmokla. Welcome to my channel where you will always find photo editing training and educational videos to help you grow as an artist and photographer. Today's video was requested by Stuart and we will take a look at the complete workflow. So we'll begin with a raw import, then we will determine what to do next in terms of the base characteristics, and then I will show you a very simple workflow. We will work on exposure adjustments, luminosity adjustments, and very simple color grading, and you will learn as well how to approach working with the Fujifilm Film simulations presets that are available if you are specifically a Fujifilm camera user. Ready? Let's jump right into it. Okay, so I'm on a Mac. I have inserted my memory card from the Fujifilm camera, so here are my RAW files. All I need to do now is to jump over to Capture One and create a new session. So, new session, let's just rename this session, let's just call it Test Fujifilm. And now let's just make sure that the session will be created in the folder that we indicated before. So I want it to be sitting here. Let's just hit enter. So everything is right. Let's now hit OK. So that way we have created our session. Let's now import the images. So I have clicked on the import button, and this is the new redesigned import window for Capture One 21. As you can see now, all of the images are selected. We can see this little orange mark beside every single image. If you don't want to import all of the images, simply untick this little button here. Nothing is selected right now, so you can pick specific images by clicking beside them and marking them. If you want to go the other way, you can select all and simply untick the images that you don't like, that you don't want to import. I want to import all of them, so I'm going to click pick all. Now all of them are marked. Now you might want to make sure that in the import to tab you have the correct session selected. It can be done very simply. Just click here, choose folder, and here just make sure that we have our session selected and the capture folder. So this folder will be set as a import folder. Typically you don't need to do this. However, if you want to make sure 100% that everything will be working fine, I would recommend checking this. So we are set. Let's just hit import all, and now our capture folder inside our created session is getting populated with the Fujifilm RAW files. So this is going to take a minute or so. The first progress bar shows the process of importing the RAW files from the memory card, and the second progress bar down below shows the process of creating these little thumbnails inside Capture One. Okay, so our import has finished. Inside our capture folder we have all our 75 images plus 2 that I have added in the end to show you one important thing. So let's now pick one image that we will be processing during this video. So let's maybe go for this one. So as the very first step, I want to take a look at the base characteristics, and I want to take a look at the possibilities that we have here. So let's jump over to the color tab. So when it comes to the ICC profile, I have only the generic settings. So if we just quickly jump over and take a look at the metadata, I have taken this image with the X-T2 Fujifilm camera. Let's jump back to the base characteristics. So you can see that there is no specific color profile for Fujifilm X-T2. If you are working with high-end cameras, there are specific color profiles for those cameras. Unfortunately, for Fujifilm X-T2, we don't have such a possibility, so the best way is to go for the generic. So that's it. So basically, with X-T2, you don't touch the ICC profile. Okay, let's now move over and take a look at curve. So here, if we open the drop-down menu, we can see that we have the whole list of the possible Fujifilm specific film simulations. So I have taken this image with the Provia standard film simulation, but I have the possibility of changing this setting here. So I can go for film extra shadow if I wanted to get more detail in my shadows and make the shadows a little bit more soft. I have the possibility of going for monochrome look. I can go for sepia and so on. I have the possibility of going for linear response as well. So the important thing that I wanted to show you is that these two images I have taken with different film simulation set in the camera, and they are not reflected here as well. If you are a black and white photography lover and if your Fujifilm camera is set to monochrome film simulation, this doesn't limit your possibilities, because if you set your camera to shooting in black and white, this makes you look at the world around you in a bit different way. You focus more on composition. Of course, you get rid of the distraction of color, but if in the future you decide that you would like to see how the color representation of the scene would look like, you can still go here to the base characteristics tab, and under curve you still have all the other film simulations available. So you can go, for example, for vivid, you can start editing with linear response if you want so. Okay, let's move over and let's analyze our selected image. So I can get rid of the browser, we'll have a little bit more space, and let's take a look at our base characteristics. So again, I have taken this image with the Fujifilm X-T2 camera, so I go for the generic ICC color profile. Let's now take a look at the curve. So by default we will always have auto here, and now I can just hover over the other options and I can decide if any of these options, if any of these Fujifilm film simulations will give me a better starting point. And to be honest, I have to say that I never do this when I'm working on my Fujifilm files. My X-T2 camera is always set to the standard, to the Fujifilm Provia film simulation, because I don't really find that these different options, they give me much of a difference. So I would always go to Capture One and I would work on color grading, so I don't touch any of this. However, if you like these film simulations inside the Fujifilm camera, you are free to work with them. So for a change, I might take a look at these different options, and so this is the image with auto setting. So if I wanted to go for softer shadows, I might go for film extra shadow. This gives me more detail in dark areas. However, this image was taken during overcast. There were plenty of clouds in the sky. The day was quite dull, and I don't feel that this will benefit the image at all. So we can scroll through the other options. When it comes to monochrome as well, I would rather start from the standard image, the color image, and use the specific tools inside Capture One to create the black and white conversion. So for the sake of this video, we might go for the vivid, because this makes those greens on the trees, on the tree trunks, a little bit stronger in comparison with auto. Here everything is grayed out, so the vivid gives a little bit more saturated colors, and we can take this as a starting point. And you might ask, what about the linear response? So in case of this image, this doesn't really make sense. Let's check exposure warning. So we are no clipping any highlights here. The linear response is useful if you have really bright areas in your image and if you like to see if there is some texture that can be revealed and that is lost. So if I move over to my exposure tab, if I go down with the exposure, you can see that there is no much texture showing up. So basically the day was really dull, there was no strong light, and it doesn't make sense. So if I would start with the linear response, that would be super helpful in case of an image that has very, very strong whites and there is still plenty of beautiful detail in the highlights that is waiting to be revealed. In case of this image, is just flattens the contrast. The linear response is the flattest curve that you can pick from this selection. This is the most neutral curve. You can say as well that this is the untouched raw file, because Capture One adds very little, the minimal amount of adjustments if you go for linear response. Any of the other options obviously have more adjustments applied by Capture One automatically. Okay, so let's go for Fujifilm Velvia Vivid. This will be our starting point for this edit. So as the next step, I would go for the option that I typically use. I would go for auto levels. So here is my levels tool, and to apply auto levels, let's just click on this little magic wand icon. So you can see that that way the contrast was adjusted by Capture One automatically. So if we want to take a look at the before and after, let's press and hold Alt key. So this is before and after. I feel that this contrast is a little bit too strong. I don't remember the scene was that contrasty. There was no such light to create this effect. So I'm going to manually adjust it. I'm going to soften those blacks and pull the white point a little bit backwards. Okay, I think this is looking good. This is a perfect starting point. And now let's take a look at the white balance. So let's just jump over to the color tab, and here in our white balance tab, we can further adjust the colors. So I remember that the scene was a little bit cooler, so I'm going to go down with my Kelvin value. So this will be adjusting my temperature. I'm going to actually highlight this value and work with my arrows on the keyboard. So downward pointing arrow will push the slider towards the left and will add blue to the image. Okay, I think this is a little bit too much, so let's move back and let's stick with the value around 5685. When it comes to the tint, here we can correct further the image. If we go to the left, obviously we'll be adding green. If we go to the right, we will be adding magenta. Let's just reset the tint. We can double click on the slider. So let's highlight the value here and let's precisely adjust the value with the arrow on the keyboard. So if I will be going with my downward pointing arrow, I will be adding a little bit of green. So I think this works really well. So I'm going to stick with the 2.6 for the tint. So let me quickly check. This is my image before applying white balance adjustment, and this is after. The difference is very, very subtle. However, it is visible, and after correcting the white balance, I have this beautiful silverish grays visible in those trunks in the background. So again, this is after correcting the white balance, and this is before. So here the image is way, way warmer, and here is the image after the adjustments. Okay, now I would jump back to my exposure tab and maybe I would go softer with the contrast. I feel that the black background here is not helping, so let's just change it to white. So like this, the image looks super bright, and I will be working on these nuances here visible in the background. I will be working on color grading, and I feel that the black background is too strong. It's just basically killing the image. So let's right click and let's go for white. So when we have selected white, we can see that the snow is not actually pure white. It has some blue to it. We can take color readouts here at the top, so we can see now way more nuances, and I actually have the feeling that the image could be softer and still a little bit brighter. So when it comes to the contrast, I'm going to go down just a touch in the exposure tab, and I'm going to go for maybe something like this. Okay, I think that -10 works well. So this is before, this is the after. So this softens the image. I can always go back here and fine-tune these adjustments, that value. Next, I will be working on color grading, so I like typically desaturating my images a bit to create this sort of neutral canvas. I'm going to go just a tiny bit, maybe towards -5, so this is before, this is the after. Very subtle difference, but it is helpful for me when I'm working on color grading. Now we can take a look as well as the HDR tool. So we can open up the shadows to make the image a little bit brighter. I think this is a bit too much. I think the value around 34 works just fine, and we can now zoom in a little bit and focus on the snow. So with the negative highlight value, we'll be bringing a little bit more of texture visible in our snow. However, I don't want to make the image too dark, because if we go all the way to the left, this will darken the snow, specifically here. So let's go for something maybe around -17. This works well. Okay, with these few very simple initial adjustments, I feel that I'm ready to move over and work on color grading. I will be working with the color balance tool. Let's work on color grading on a separate layer. So I'm going to create new field adjustment layer, and let's just rename it. Let's now move over to the color tab and let's pick our color balance tool. Let's open it up and let's begin with master. So I want to make this image a little bit on a warmer side. I will be playing around with the greens and those orangey leaves. So I'm going to go for this sort of direction to add yellow and orange to the image. So this is what I have applied on the master tab, and this relates to the whole image. Then I will target specifically the shadows, luminosity range, the midtones and highlights. So if we take a look at the histogram, in the master I'm applying my color adjustment. I'm injecting a little of the warm yellow and orange tone to the whole image, to the whole spectrum, to the dark tones, blacks, midtones and highlights. In the shadows, I will be targeting specifically this part of the histogram, midtones, the middle part, and the highlights. I will be targeting that peak of information reflected in the histogram here. So let's jump over to shadows. And when it comes to shadows, I will go for similar color. So I want to inject quite a lot of this warm tone, something between the orange and yellow. When it comes to midtones, I will actually go for a complementary color here. So we have those greens, those warm greens on the T-trunks. So we are somewhere here. So I will go towards the opposite direction on the color wheel. So we have the trunks with this sort of color here. I'm going to go the opposite direction and inject just a little bit of complementary color to create more depth to the image, to create a color contrast. So something maybe more towards the purple. Something like this works really well, and I'm going to actually jump back to shadows, and apart from injecting color to my shadow range, I want to darken them. So I will be using this slider, and I want to make my shadows just a little bit darker. So we have injected the purple to the midtones. I'm not going to make them darker, so let's leave it as it is, and let's move over and work on highlights. So here I want to add a little bit of blue, so let's go somewhere like this, and I'm going to make my highlights a little bit brighter. Okay, not too much, something like this, and maybe let's go more towards the cyanish color. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have been working with the color balance tool. This is the image before applying color grading, and this is after the very subtle color grading. Now I want to focus on these trees visible here in the background. Let's just close the color balance tool. We won't need it anymore. So I'm now interested on color grading these trees visible here. So now they are quite neutral. We have those silverish tones, and to create further depth to this image, I want to inject a little bit of blue towards this sort of luminosity range. So in order to do this, I will be working with a Luma mask. Let's jump over to our layers tab, and let's create new field adjustment layer. Let's rename it. Let's call it trees background blue, so we'll know what we are doing here. And I will be now creating a Luma range mask. Let's maybe zoom in a little bit so we'll be able to create precise mask, because once you activate the tool, you can't zoom in on your image. Okay, so here's our Luma range mask. Let's tick this little button here. So we have our mask displayed. The red overlay indicates our mask, and this means that those areas in the image that are covered with the red color with the overlay will be included in our mask and will be adjusted. We will be basically adding the blue to those areas. So I'm going to fine-tune the mask. I want to narrow the range. I don't want to have those blacks included. So let's go for maybe something like this, and let's make this transition a little bit smoother. I don't want to have my snow included in the selection, so I want to be precise and have those trunks, those trees visible in the background. So let's see what else we can do. This one I think we can push just a bit towards the right hand side, so the transition will be softer. When it comes to the black point, let's maybe include a little bit more here, so something maybe around 73. The transition is fine. So now let's actually fine-tune our mask, fine-tune our selection. This can be done with these two sliders. So basically, if the radius is set at 0, it doesn't matter what you apply here, because the sensitivity slider will be only working if the value will be higher than 0. So let's increase it. Let's go for something around here, maybe 8, and let's increase sensitivity. So this will make your mask more precise, and I'm going to go for a value around 86 just to show you the difference. So this is the max. And if we go all the way to the left, the mask is way less precise. You can see those really soft transitions. So this is not what we are after in case of this image, because if we go all the way to the left, basically this part is sort of melted. There is no visible distinction between those trunks in the background and the sky. So let's make the sensitivity way stronger. So now with higher sensitivity settings, you can see that the definition is very nicely improved. Okay, so our mask is ready. Let's hit apply. If you want to see the preview of the mask, you can always hit M on the keyboard. So this is our mask. Let's zoom out. Let's hide the preview. And let's now inject a little bit of blue to those areas that are highlighted with the mask. So let's now make these trees a little bit colder. Let's inject a little bit of blue. I'm going to go for the color balance and either in the highlight or master. Let's maybe start with the master. So I'm going to go for sort of cyanish tone, and this is very, very subtle. Before and after, and let's now go for highlights, because if we just hover over those trees in our image, and if you take a look at the histogram, you can see which luminosity range you are actually targeting. So this is sort of highlights and very, very bright midtones. So I'm going to go for highlights, and here I'm just going to inject blue. So my trunks will get this very, very beautiful tone. So immediately after this adjustment, the image got way cooler. So this is before and this is the after. It's very subtle difference, but I'm sure it makes the mood way more wintry. The image feels way more sort of frozen. So our color grading is in place. Let's just see the image before and after. Now it's time to some final adjustments. And by the way, if you're getting value from my videos, please leave me thumbs up, please leave me a comment. I really, really appreciate it. I reply to every single comment under my YouTube videos. And of course, I'm always waiting for your films suggestions. So if you have anything that you would like to learn inside Capture One, please suggest. If I find that it will be beneficial for my viewers, I will definitely make a video on it. And if you really, really like this channel, I will be super grateful if you subscribe to my channel. So let's now jump back to the image and let's focus on those very few final touches. So I might increase the contrast a little bit just to make the definition a little bit stronger, and to do this I will be working either with my clarity tool inside the exposure tab. So for this I will actually create new field adjustment layer, and on this layer I will be working on sharpening the image and adding the definition. So when it comes to sharpening, let's maybe start with this. Let's move over to the detail tab and let's apply a bit of sharpening. Remember, always take a look at your image at least at 100% magnification level. The image was taken with quite a shallow depth of field. I had the aperture set to 2, so the trunk in the foreground is soft and those trees in the background are soft as well. So we will be looking at the objects that I was focusing on, so I mean these T-trunks here in the middle of the frame. So let's apply a bit of sharpening. I'm going to increase my amount, nothing crazy. I think something like this already makes those branches too strong. So I think something around 200 or even less, and I'm going to complement this with my clarity. So let's go on the clarity as well towards the positive value. I think this benefits the image. Let's see before and after applying clarity. So the image is almost ready. As the last touch, I will add a custom vignette just to cover this right down corner, just to make it a little bit darker, because there is nothing really attractive here and it's a little bit too strong. It's distracting from the rest of the image that was built on this diagonal line going across the frame. So let's just create new field adjustment layer and let's quickly rename it to vignette, and here I will be working with the gradient. So let's just apply it over there, and I'm not going to be adjusting exposure. I will go down with highlight, so this will reveal the texture in the snow and it will make the snow darker. I don't want to make it darker than this. This will look artificial. So actually I think I went a bit too far with the mask. So this is the preview of my mask. I'm going to push it backwards. So just this corner here is a little bit darker because the eye will always go to the brightest areas in the image. So this is the final result. I hope you have enjoyed working with me. Let's just quickly go through the adjustments. So let's just switch off everything. So this is our raw file. This is our starting point. So here we have picked our vivid curve, and then we have applied some basic adjustments on exposure, on HDR, and we have applied auto levels adjustment. So then, having all our luminosity adjustments in place, we were ready to move over and start working on color. So this is our first color grading layer. Then we have added more depth to the image. We have made those trees in the background colder. So this is our adjustment. We have used the Luma range mask, and just to show you, this is non-destructive workflow. If you are working with the Luma range, you can always readjust the mask. So if I go here, I can still move around with these points, with these sliders, and I can either extend my selection towards the black tones, towards the darks, or if I go towards the right, I will include more of the snow. So just keep in mind that this is possible, that once you apply your Luma range mask, this is not sort of baked in the image. You can always go back and fine-tune this. As the last steps, we have applied a little bit of sharpening to the image, we have applied a little bit of clarity, and we have darkened the bottom right corner. When it comes to sharpening, I'm tempted to actually go for a little bit higher value, maybe something like this, around 250. Okay, so our final artwork is ready. So in this video, we've been talking about the complete Fujifilm workflow, beginning with importing the file and going through very few adjustments and color grading. So I've been talking about the curves adjustment here in the base characteristics. I have mentioned briefly the linear response. If you want to learn more about this option, I will link another video where I cover this in depth. And I might show you one very last thing at this point, what I really like. So we have started working on this image with the vivid film simulation. Now, if I just right click on the image and clone variant, let's clone another one. So now we have three images that are exactly the same, but super quick. In split of a second, we can just apply different film simulation and see if we like it more, or maybe it can take our edit in a different direction. We can create different versions. So for the middle image, I'm going to actually go here and change, let's go not for sepia, maybe for extra shadow. So you can see that this image in comparison to this has this very beautiful painterly aquarelle feel to it, very soft colors. And let's go for the third one, and here let's maybe check, this will be the film standard. So you can see that the colors are less saturated, the image is colder, it's more sort of graphical, we have stronger contrasts and less color. So that way, super quickly, after working on your image in Capture One, you can still try out those different film simulations that are exclusive, that are specific for the Fujifilm cameras. So thank you very much for watching. This was Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes, and I will see you very soon in the next video.